Earth my body, water my blood, air my breath, and fire my spirit. Earth my body, water my blood, air my breath, and fire my spirit. I like to sing to the earth, I like to hold her. She likes to sing to me, she likes to hold me. I like to sing to the earth, I like to hold her. She likes to sing to me, she likes to hold me. I carry fistfuls of leaves. I make love to the breeze. I carry fistfuls of bones. I trust they will lead me home. I carry grief on my wings. I know I caged birds sing. Through many turns of this moon, my women have suffered wounds. But my grandmother's with me. Close your eyes, can't you see? And my grandchildren are here. The rose, the crow, and the deer. I am surrounded by light, the light of stories. I need to quiet my mind, I need to listen. We are surrounded by light, the light of stories. We need to quiet our minds, we need to listen. Earth my body, water my body, air my breath, and fire my spirit. Earth my body, water my body, earth my body, earth my body, water my blood, air my breath, and fire my spirit.
All yours, Susan.
Thank you, Rodney. Welcome, everyone, to our Wind Voices 2021 series. And Rodney, this is number
25.
25. All right. Thank you, Rodney. Before we begin, I always start out with a little bit about Grandmother's Circle the Earth and how we began way back in 2009, 2010. And we have covered quite a bit of the world and met so many grandmothers and others wherever we've been, and grateful for that. And the Wind Voices is growing out from that work with the Grandmother's Circle of the Earth. And Rodney stepped up with our grandmother's page when he became the first man administrator that we ever had, and it was really fun and interesting, and we're grateful to have him, and from there evolved into what we're doing now together as we balance the masculine feminine to the very best of our ability, and it's been beautiful. I'm really grateful to have Rodney here with us, and I know we all are, so thank you, Rodney. I'm going to speak to this because a lot of people recently, in these last maybe 3 weeks, have been experiencing this, I guess, turmoil or chaos that has to do with the unseen world, with different life forms, entities, And I received a beautiful message today from our dear friend in Brazil who talked to me about that and the work that we do to kind of balance the negative, how important that is. And we're all experiencing it. And that's why I'm talking about it. Somebody else called me and I hadn't mentioned this. So these messages are coming in absolutely uninvited or unsolicited, but they reminded me about the importance of sage, using the sage and using the other medicines that we have been given, using our protections, because we have chosen, each of us, to be light workers. We have chosen consciously to be part of creating the next world as we are wrapping up where we have been and going into the new paradigm. We are dreaming that in the dream time, and there will be things in the dream time that are there to disrupt that or derail that. But we are strong. And so in this dimension, as we prepare ourselves and as we stand in our integrity, we will be able to stand strong in all the multiple dimensions of our life and our existence. And I just had one more thing this afternoon. I had a visit from someone completely unexpectedly. I was surprised. They sat here and they said to me, I came to bring you a message. And that message is, I, the Lord, will forgive whom I forgive, but to you it is to forgive all men. And I've been thinking about that. And forgiveness is love. It's love, whether it's our ho'oponopono, no matter what it is, it's love. It's the absolute pure love that is unconditional. And that is more powerful than anything else in existence. And we are to be that love. So as we now come from that place with our wind voices, I want to remind everyone that wind voices came about through the kindness of Ted Silverhand. And as he was speaking to me one day, he talked about the wind voices and opened a door for me. And that doorway has led down the corridor of our Wind Voices 2021 with our 52 speakers throughout the year. And so today we have the honor of having with us Romola Thumbadoo. She's raised in South Africa, but her ancestry is from India. And Ted had told me about her several months ago. And before we had even started the series, he talked to me about her and the role that she has played in the world and in the lives of some people who are just phenomenal people. And when I saw her first attending our Wind Voices, I was really excited and began to read a little bit about her and learn about her. And I knew that there was a reason why she was to be on our program. And so here she is today. I'm not going to take up any more time because I know that everything that she has to share with us will be absolutely perfect. But with that, I'm going to welcome her here and I'm going to turn the feather over to her.
Miigwech. It's a great, great honor for me to join you all this afternoon. Thank you, Susan and Rodney, for hosting and welcoming me in. And thank you very much, Ted Silverhand, for introducing me to this group and for remembering me over all these years. Truly an honor to have met you many years ago and grateful to be, invited to come and share amongst all these special people. And I would also like to acknowledge Mac Boogaloo, who I think is a connection of this group from some time ago. And he too found me many years ago. And through that connection, we discovered that we were actually connected with several other people who comprise the William Commander Circle of All Nations. And so I come to you both with my own fairly long history working in the criminal justice system And then my last 20 years of work supporting the Circle of All Nations and grandfather William Commander, Algonquin elder. And over the last 8 years, I've been in school to actually leave some record of the William Commander thinking and teaching and the ideals of the Circle of All Nations. So I am going to be presenting a PowerPoint presentation, which is a little bit, technical for a talking circle. But at the same time, I hope we'll have time for just a more informal chat towards the end. So Rodney, am I already able to share my screen? Yes, I can. And here we go. And does that work okay?
Bigger was better, Romola, but we can see it.
Bigger was better. Let me just get it right. I guess I don't see it so well with all of you in there, but on the sidebar. Let me see. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, maybe. Okay. So this then is the Circle of All Nations presentation, largely on the legacy work of Indigenous elder William Commander. And also, of course, since I've been so actively engaged in it over the last 20 years, it's part of my work and my passion. I'm grateful to be joining Wind Voices in this 2021 series. And by way of introduction, I'm a student. I'm doing postdoctoral research right now on William Commander's legacy. And I'm the informal coordinator of the Circle of All Nations, which is a global eco-community that William Commander imagined into being many, many decades ago. And when I go to our initial prayer, I invite you all to bring your own prayers to this gathering, this event. And with respect to William's work and my work, we very much focused on the laws of nature. And we created this prayer last November to acknowledge his birth date. And in this image created by a student at Carleton University in Ottawa, we say we're talking about the geocosmic prayer and reflection. It includes iconic symbols of importance to our worldview. And these include Grandmother Moon and the Morning Star. Elder Commander was called Ojigwanong, meaning Morning Star. And these symbols invoke the spirit of fire, enlightenment, and the cosmic to us. Asin Rock and the sleeping giant rock of Lake Superior, commemorating earth creation in rock. Air, wind, movement, animating water life emergent from the oxygen rocks of the Kitchissippi Ottawa River, which was so important in the creation the possibility of life emerging on Earth. We have symbols of bird, wolf, eel, and turtle, honoring evolution, plant and animal life, Turtle Island, and the canoe, acknowledging the ultimate nurturer, Mother Earth, and symbolizing the enigmatic journey of life. This graphic image was created by Maduran. So today, my plan is to acknowledge the summer solstice in North America, the June solstice, and present our legacy for hope in an animation image. So June and the solstice were very important to the people of North America and to William Commander, and in particular to his father, Grandpa Alonzo. And in the messages about the thinking of Grandfather Alonzo, we realized that this important date in the cosmic cycle was also registered in his way of understanding time, climate, the movement of the celestial bodies, and it acknowledged really the huge knowledge of the indigenous peoples with respect to how the earth functioned. This date, June 21st, also took on political significance in the mid-40s when Grandfather William Commander's friend, Jules Siwi, who was the architect really of the North American Indian Nations government, announced really that June 21st would become Indian Day. And in 1996, this did in fact happen in Canada, where Canada designated June 21st National Aboriginal Day. And William Commander's own daughter, Evelyn Commander, did the opening prayer at the office of the Governor General. And the Governor General's office for us in Canada represents really the linkage with the Queen. So it affirmed a kind of connection of the Indigenous peoples with the leadership and affirms really the sovereignty idea that has been part of the thinking of so many Indigenous peoples, including Grandfather William Commander. And of course, it's now become the Indigenous Peoples Day, and we acknowledge it for that. So now I'm also going to be talking a little bit about myself, about Grandfather Commander, about the Circle of All Nations, about my studies, and then hopefully we'll get to conversation. So I mentioned this idea about a legacy for hope. And just a day or so ago, a young student who I've been working with at Carleton University created this image for us. And it's our prayer that the journey continues past the rapids of the last 500 years, the challenges of COVID, the challenges of the multiple struggles that people all over the world are dealing with. And it's our reaffirmation of a legacy for hope. You know, at one stage we talked about it as a legacy of hope, but as we discussed it with the young people, the idea of presenting something that was motivational was the reason for the selection of that title. Also, I have a great grandfather with the name of Hope, so it's my family prayer too. That's part of this this image. And so Jenny worked very hard to get our trees to come alive, to have the water bubble past the rapids, past the rocks, and to have the bird fly into a future. And so there you have the image of Grandfather Commander, the wolf spirit, which was a huge guide for him throughout his life, the canoe, continuing with the journey. And a little later, I'll tie that thread in with our actual present day research as we're attempting to create a digital global village during these times of COVID isolation, COVID pandemic, and the challenges of the day. So basically the Circle of All Nations work is about bridge building building for systemic change. I myself met Grandfather William Commanda in 1997 and have supported his work since then. My background, as Susan said, I was born in South Africa. I'm of East Indian ancestry, but I have ancestors who lived in Mauritius, in India, in South America, in England. And so it's a bit of a mixed bag that really pins me to a global reality. When I came to Canada in 1970, I studied English literature, American literature, Canadian literature, and then ended up working in a halfway house for federal offenders. That was one of my bigger learning experiences. And really, it was the actual people I worked with who taught me about respect and taught me about the importance of the social justice issues that are so much a part of our circle grounding. Thereafter, I served Canada as a public servant for many years, and I was a parole officer. And I used to think it was a great thing to be an immigrant taking care of the safety in Canada. Many years later, I became involved in Indigenous justice issues, and then it seemed even more special that I was serving the First Peoples. And this was primarily commenced in the late 80s and throughout the 90s. The 1980s in Canada involved a lot of research into Indigenous justice issues, and there were inquiries in every province and territory, which indicated that Indigenous peoples were ill-served by the systemic and overt issues oppressing them within the justice system. Thereafter, there was a land-based issue, the Oka crisis, and thereafter, Royal Commission report on the aspirations and the conditions of Indigenous peoples, and that resulted in the creation of new federal legislation in Canada. One of the things I was involved in was the Aboriginal Correction Strategy, and I developed the Prairie Region Strategy, and this was the first time that we began to find Native liaison officers, elders, Aboriginal staff working in prisons. There was cross-cultural training. There was the creation of the idea of healing lodges. I was on the task force of federally sentenced women. And that was a very interesting initiative because the Elizabeth Fry Society, which was engaged with women's legal issues, women in prison, the federal governments, the provincial governments joined together to improve the services for women. And here in Canada, the one prison we had was considered unfit for bears, far less women. But very fast, Indigenous women who were invited to the first meeting indicated that they were going to be a real part and not a token part of the initiative. And they came up with the most brilliant idea within the criminal justice system. And that was for a notion of healing. Before that, we were accustomed to crime equaling punishment and punishment equaling incarceration. So this idea that the Indigenous women retrieved really by doing a lot of circles with the elders contributed to the idea of healing. Unfortunately, it hasn't matured in its operation well enough to actually be serving people well in this healing journey. And some of the restorative movement that it initiated, that these other strategies initiated, have been stalled. And unfortunately, many people in Canada, and I think in other parts of the world, are still facing rough times in prisons. One of our friends was Donald Marshall Jr., who was incarcerated for a murder he hadn't committed. He then became a big voice for justice, for truth and justice. Later, he became a voice for Indigenous rights, and he became a part of our Aboriginal Justice Learning Network. And in this work, we introduced a lot of storytelling, and Indigenous peoples shared so many of their stories in the late 90s. And that work, together with my work in urban Aboriginal policing, brought me to Grandfather Commander. He attended one of our meetings, liked what he was. Hello? Is it working okay? Are we doing all right?
Yeah, someone just unmuted themselves. I'll disable that.
Okay. Okay, so really great. Thank you. And so then, I met Grandfather Commander. He invited me to a gathering at his place. And Susan, I managed to get to that one, though unfortunately you didn't. But I have to tell you, when I was first invited, I was kind of hesitant. I was wondering why I would go to a spiritual gathering. And when I said that to Grandfather, he said, well, yes, that's a $64 question why you'd come. And a week before his gathering, he asked me again whether I was coming, and I was still dodging. And he said, anyone can learn, And so I rented a station wagon, put my headboard into it to make myself a mattress. I bought granola bars and orange juice, and I went camping to this gathering at Grandfather's Lake in Kirigan Zibi Reserve, Maniwaki. And of course, it was such a transformative experience, because then I began to understand the many things that he was wanting to do. And he was like 84 when I met him. So he was an old guy working really, really hard to gather energy towards the creation of this Circle of All Nations, a culture of peace. So a few years later, I took early retirement from the federal government to basically support him. And then finally, after he died in 2011, after my mother died in 2011, I returned to kind of figure out whether I would be returning to government or wondering what my next steps would be. And my next steps took me to school. And this is why then I have to leave a bit of a record of my credentials, because basically what I'm trying to do is leave a record of the William Commander thinking and teaching in the academy, because he himself received honorary doctorate degrees here in Canada. And I didn't want his record to just be that of a pretty face. So he was passionate about his concern for Mother Earth and for North America. And he, like other Indigenous peoples, talked about Turtle Island. And early in the 80s, in the 2000s, we found a way to explain to people how Indigenous peoples conceptualize this amazing image of Turtle Island by going through maps in our old books. Now, the first image you see is really a live turtle that I met in the aquarium in Cape Town in 2012. And just this year, it was an injured turtle, and I took many photographs of it, including of its injured shell. Just this year, 2020, I saw a newspaper article, and it worked out that this very turtle was heading to its nesting grounds in Australia. It had been healed, it had been released from the aquarium in Cape Town, it had gone off in the wrong direction up the West Coast, then after 6 months reoriented itself and then headed to the West. And I make a point about that because, we're dealing with so many changes on planet Earth right now that are impacting not just us as humans, but every creature. And a creature like the turtle that depends on the magnetic currents and the ocean flow to orient itself to its perpetuation of life is so important. And the next image I show you there is an image of an artist's interpretation of Turtle Island. The first map shows you Mami Winini, which is William Commander's word for himself. We're nomads, we traveled every day. They were traveling freely across Turtle Island. And today we see demarcations of North America, as we call it today. William Commander was the carrier of the sacred wampum heritage of the Algonquins of the Eastern Seaboard. He received 2 honorary doctorate degrees, and he was appointed Officer of the Order of Canada, Canada's highest acknowledgement of people who desire a better country. And we say, indeed, grandfather did desire a better Canada, and that is why he worked so hard till he died at the age of almost 98. And the little image there includes this legacy prayer of his, that we must come together with one heart, one mind, one love, and one determination to create a circle of all nations, a culture of peace. So who is William Commander? He's the carrier of the sacred wampum heritage. He's a renowned birch bark canoe maker and craftsman. He's a political Algonquin leader, elder, chief, and he was the chief of the North American Indian Nations government, and a little bit more about that later. He's the founder of the Circle of All Nations, a global eco-peace community dedicated to advancing environmental stewardship and racial harmony. He's the officer of the Order of Canada, recipient of the honorary degrees. University of Ottawa Chancellor Michael Jean created the Commander Hall in recognition of his relevance to academic knowledge in 2014. And the Student Resource Center, the Indigenous Student Resource Center at Carleton University was named Ojigwanong, again after William Commander, the Morning Star. And on the right, you see an image of a plaque at the Canadian History Hall with his message. And his message was always twofold. 1, the respect for Mother Earth, and 2, respect for each other. But in his view, both contracted to be one message, because he saw himself, as well as all of us, as belonging to Mother Earth. And so then we've wondered at different stages, what's religion, what's sacred, what's spirit. And with respect to the sacred heritage of wampum that he carried, with wampum belts, the first known carrier of the wampum belts being his great-great-grandfather, Pakanawatik, stick hit by lightning, thunder stick. The wampum belts were about, the wampum belts that he carried were threefold. One was the 7 Fire Prophecy belt. It was the oldest wampum belt. It's the longest one on the table. And it talked about the changes that would come into the lives of the indigenous peoples with the coming of the newcomers, and the various impacts that were going to be made on their lives. And many people believe that Grandfather Commander was the carrier of the wampum heritage during the unfolding of the 7th fire, the 7th message, the 7th prophetic message of the wampum belt. And, at one stage we were kind of hopeful that that was leading us to the lighting of the 8th fire of peace and harmony. But at one stage I'd written such a thing down, and Grandfather then said, no, it hasn't come yet. And unfortunately he was right, because we are still living lives of challenge and strife. But as with our image, we're also believing in the legacy for hope to lead us into a better future for all. The other belt in the middle is the three-figure welcoming and sharing wampum belt. And it's a very important wampum belt from the 1700s, when the Algonquins on the eastern seaboard welcomed the newcomers to the continent and drew their hands together in friendship. And these were the hands of then primarily the French and the English, and agreed to share with them their grand natural resources as well as their values. And it was a sacred agreement acknowledged by the symbol of the Vatican. And that was really, really very important to William Commanda. And so though he knows and knew his family, his ancestors had struggled and suffered deeply after the coming of the newcomers, he still affirmed that welcome in commitment to their promise, hoping for the day when people would, in fact, respect the friendship ideals of that very important wampum. And of course, in those days, these people of the Eastern Seaboard were the earliest ones to encounter those newcomers. The third wampum belt, and you see it a little bit more clearly on the last image, and there he is showing it actually to a grandson-in-law of Nelson Mandela, who came to visit Canada and then insisted on coming and getting a blessing from the Indigenous elder. And that belt is really, in many respects, the symbol of borderlessness for William Commanda. Because in part, it talked about the movement of the people and the commitment that they should pass through the lands, through what later became Canada and the United States with the creation of the Jay Treaty and the division of the continent. But they were to pass back and forth without molestation. And it's very interesting to explain, perhaps at another point, how William actually animated that design in the belt. But anyway, there you go, as the carrier of the sacred wampum heritage. He was also the supreme chief of the North American Indian Nations government. And this was created, as I mentioned earlier, in the 1940s, mid-40s, through the major efforts of Jules Siwi and many other chiefs, like Chief John Shabbat from William's own community, and other Indigenous leadership. And then William Commanda became very much involved with that and became its supreme chief and remained holding that title till his death. He worked very hard all across the American Northeast to draw together the indigenous peoples. And since some of this work started in the 40s, since they went directly to the Secretary General of the United Nations, they were making a political statement about the rights of indigenous peoples. And so there I say the activism of William Commanda and his colleagues of the 40s really are the underpinning of the rights movement that later also supported the civil rights movement of the Black people in America, and of course later the struggles in South Africa, etc. So yes, there we go. I say, I think I've pretty well told you much of that already. So William Commanda. So I wrote a book about him actually, and I called it Learning from a Kindergarten Dropout. But in fact, it was a tongue-in-cheek kind of title, because William Commanda, though he only learned to read and write in English as an adult, and also to count as an adult, he was extremely well read. He was extremely well educated on every aspect of the history of his peoples, the history of the peoples across the continent. And there you see a listing of some of the books that were very important to him in his library. He name stamped all his books because he was quite possessive of them. He was quite, and he read every one of them. So you'd see his annotations on the pages, all the things that struck him as important. And now I want to see if I can go to this. Oh no. I had wanted to play this for you. Maybe I'm going to play it a little later because it's not activating right away for me. It's where William talks about the coming of the newcomers to his continent and the changes that they inflicted on the people, right down to a discussion of the children who lost their lives in the residential school. And many of you will be aware that this is a really hot and painful moment in Canada, as we realize just how widespread the abuse of Indigenous children through the residential school era and thereafter has been. And William Commander talked about that maybe 2010. Maybe if you just give me 1 second, I shall see if I can't draw it up right away. Excuse me, just have too many. Okay, I shall actually try to find it later. Okay, so then the kindergarten dropout, that's our book. The next image is of William doing a prayer for the land mines treaty that was signed here in Canada, the initiative that Princess Diana was very actively involved in. So his peace message was like global in its implications. The next is a prayer for the Chaudière Victoria Island, a place where he had a vision for an Indigenous healing and peace building center. Unfortunately, that has not manifested as planned, and instead it's become a privatized place for condo development. And there's William Commander when he received his first honorary degree at the Ottawa University. He actually delivered the convocation speech, and the party afterwards was really hardly for the young people, it was really William's party. Here then is the image of the three-figure wampum belt, the welcome of the Algonquin people of the Eastern Seaboard to the newcomers. And there is William Commander reaffirming that greeting with the former Prime Minister, Pierre Trudeau. During this meeting, they shared a plate of beans. And William Commander spent a lot of time talking to the Prime Minister about the justice, and actually the injustice that the Indigenous peoples were struggling with. So he said, well, you know, we spell this word J-U-S-T-U-S. And so Pierre Trudeau said, no, you know, it's justice, J-U-S-T-I-C-E. No, insisted William, it's just us. And the ironic implications of the William coinage of that word has later been taken up by many other activists. And of course, the struggle for justice continues to be part of our reality today, so many decades later. The spirit of that welcoming wampum belt was also very important to William Commanda. And he actually pointed out to me that he had actually welcomed the Dalai Lama here in 1991, when Canada really was not prepared to welcome him. And later he welcomed Nelson Mandela, the other kind of voice of global peace. And here with the Queen Elizabeth at a garden tea party, William Command is actually showing her a sovereign that he shared, that she had sent to all the chiefs in North America when she became queen. And, you know, it was really quite interesting, this garden party that happened in 2008, because really the only person she had a real deep relationship with was actually William Commanda over the decades. And she said to him, "What, you still have that old thing?" Well, we had hoped that that would lead to, you know, a greater support for the vision for the Indigenous Center, but that hasn't really exactly manifested. The idea about the welcome was also reflected in the Sunbow 5 walk. And last year we celebrated the 25th anniversary of this this amazing journey where William and his friends walked from First Encounter Beach in Massachusetts all the way across to Santa Barbara, California, actually the home place of one of the worst mission schools in North America. And over a 7.5-month period, joined periodically 7 times by William Commanda, people walked across to raise awareness of Indigenous issues, issues of Mother Earth, and also to take prayer, Indigenous prayer, to land that had been desecrated by blood. And that included actually a prayer for Martin Luther King in Memphis at the motel. So William's engagement with both the peace and the environmental issues was extensive. And last year was the celebration of that moment. This image was actually created by a student. So really what we've been trying to do with my educational process is also to engage young people in understanding the work of Indigenous folk. Here is an image of the many people who were engaged in the creation of the vision for the Asanabkap Indigenous Peace Center. And this was intended to manifest at the Sacred Chaudia Falls, a very special circular rapids, which also exuded the sound of Mother Earth in its earlier days. A place where William had hoped all the world would come together to create a global eco think tank to address the challenges of the world. Unfortunately, that has not manifested as he anticipated. And of course, we've had unprecedented flooding here in the capital city, 2017, 2019. We've had a tornado. It arrived in the last solstice gathering that the Circle of All Nations hosted, and thereafter we were never able to get together again in person in circle gatherings. And actually what we do now through our Facebook live video events is create a digital peace community to again continue to advance ideas about environment and peace building. So we're doing a kind of virtual thing. So here then is an image of William Commanda in his home with his books and his many documentaries, and the television always on because he always watched the news several times a day. So he was really very much attuned into global news and global patterns. And so his concern was really not just for the Indigenous peoples of Canada or North America or South America. And I say South America as well, because after he received a condor feather during the Sunbow 5 walk, He always liked to use the condor feather when he opened meetings and offered his prayers and greetings, because he said two things. He said, you know, he didn't create the border between Canada and the United States, and neither did he create the Panama Canal. So he talked about the integrity of the North American, the South American landscape, and connected with many people from South America who affirmed that. But of course, as a kind of elder was like even bigger than that in a consciousness about environment and the global scheme of things, he was concerned about the entire world. I'm sorry, that'll continue to ring for a few moments, though I moved the phone far away. So now then, after I returned from South Africa after my mother's death, and I was pondering whether I was going to return to school or work, I ended up going into geography and researching the William Commander legacy so that I could plant him on a map. And there are two threads to my work here. One is a digital mapping of his story through an innovative cybercartographic digital atlas platform that has been created at the Geomatics and Cartographic Research Center, where my supervisor, Dr. Fraser Taylor, directs an innovative program of research. And this is really a storytelling platform where I want to leave some of this information so that other people will be able to absorb it when they're interested. Unfortunately, you know, I referred to some of our challenges at the Sharjah Victoria Island Sanabka site, and that has made it challenging for Indigenous peoples to remember and engage in the William Commander story and legacy. So I'm hoping in the future with such a record, students, Algonquin students and others will be able to understand better all that he lived and worked for. But the other part of my work is what I call cybernetics. And there I found this really interesting word. And when I researched it, it held the connotation of steering, of navigation, of guiding. And I say that this is essentially reflected also in the canoe journey that William Commander stood for. And it also reflects the kind of motivational direction that he inspired people to embrace with the Circle of All Nations. So the cybernetics now, we say, is part of our Facebook world, where everything is so far time-paced, so fast-moving, and we share ideas that are important to Circle of All Nations in all our Facebook pages. And since the COVID catastrophe, really we have been obliged to learn how to do Facebook Live videos and work with the technology. Some of our efforts have been rather feeble, but nonetheless, we've carried, we've engaged with many people in this process, and many students have been involved in it. And so that's our cybernetic thread in the academic world. Now I have a couple of video clips, and I'm going to see if one of them will, well, maybe I'm, okay, it's perhaps because I don't have the right thread. Maybe I have to move into the presentation mode shortly. Okay, so then I'm going to say yes. So there are these videos. This one, Good Enough for Two, is comes from the canoe teaching video, which shows as much about the teaching of the ancient canoe craft, as well as it shows the values and ideals that have been important to William Commander. The other one is the 2020 Circle of All Nations commemorative video that we created, because 20 years ago, last May, we hosted an international peace gathering, and people from all over the world participated. In May last year, we reconnected with many of them and did a whole day of Facebook Live videos to regenerate energy for the key 4 themes of the Circle of All Nations work: social justice, respect for Mother Earth, racial harmony and peace building, and of course, Indigenous wisdom. This next video clip, it's a 10-minute video clip about our Circle of All Nations work and our animation of a medicine wheel. I was invited to do a presentation for the Climate Coaching Alliance Global Webinar. And there is a much longer 90-minute video that captures this workshop, where we talked about how we could take Indigenous medicine wheel thinking to inspire other people working on climate change, but for them to embrace Indigenous concepts or William Commander kinds of and Circle of All Nations ideals in doing their work. And I extracted from that a 10-minute clip, which shows you then how we actually animate our Circle of All Nations logo. And in this is the landing page to our our online communications. So in the center, you see actually our logo. The tree in the center was a gigantic spruce tree, actually photographed by William Commander, where you see 4 trunks emerging from the roots. And the 7 roots, of course, represent the 7 fire prophecy. The turtle turtle's back is actually a photograph of a live turtle photographed by Claude Latour, who pulled together our image for us. The mountains represent a lake of 2 mountains, Oka, the ancestral meeting place of William Commander's ancestors. Very important place where the Ottawa River joins the St. Lawrence. The St. Lawrence, as you might know, is born really in Lake Superior, and it travels through all of the 5 Great Lakes, joining then in Montreal and heading to the Atlantic seaboard. And the image of the morning star is the symbol of William Commander's own name, William Commander being Ojigwanong. And he was born on the 13th of November in 1913, on the eve of the First World War. And for many of us, he's become a symbol of light in a world of increasing darkness as we move from the First World War to the Second World War, and of course to the strife and struggle that we continue to face today. And in this image, you'll see then a reference to the archive sites. We have 2 Circle of All Nations archive sites where all the information, though it's the platform may not be always so smart as today's platforms, still nonetheless carry concrete information and knowledge. So we leave that there for all who are interested. Right across is the Asanabka Legacy Site, which talks about the vision for a peace and a peace building center, but also includes much of our more recent reports and activities. And then the other 2 are links to our Facebook site and our Facebook pages, our Cyber Cartographic Atlas, where we're going to be mapping the story on the land. And then eventually in the center, well, actually we're working on it right now, a new Circle of All Nations website. So there too, you see how we use the medicine wheel to develop all our planning and our thinking. So I'll just take a minute to say, we go from the yellow. We start our planning work with the yellow, the idea of new light, new ideas, new planning, visioning. We move then to a manifestation in terms of the action, the community, the practical things we do. We move then into the zone of reflection, the West, where we look at quality control of the ideas that we've put forward and activated. And then we re-articulate them with improvements in the zone of the wisdom and the knowledge and our writings and our papers and our videos. So that is a mini version really of the medicine wheel, which I see it wants to be shown. And finally, a linkage to our reference materials. But before I do that, possibly show you that, I think I'm going to see if I can actually change the view to a presenter view for a minute and go back. Pardon me, it's not wanting to show. Okay, so this is.
Thank you also for sending out so much of information about this in advance. So many of our participants will already have seen the image of a grandfather William Commander. And we created that image, a student actually created that image for in acknowledgement of his November birthday.
You know, I'm actually going to
geocosmic prayer.
Stop the sharing.
And it reflects really the great respect that Grandfather Commander inspired in so many of us for the cosmic world, for the key elements, for the cardinal directions, for the spirit of Mother Earth, the waters, and that energy is what has inspired all our Circle of All Nations work.
Okay, so Rodney, I might need some help. I want you to stop that, and I don't know how I started it.
Start sharing your screen again, and then stop playing that video.
Has it stopped?
Share the thinkings of a Grandfather Commander, and actually people of many other cultures,
Start sharing.
but with a diversity of people too. So, you know, the circle image, the mentality.
Now press pause right there to the left. There
To the left.
And,
up, left, right, down. See the pause button right there?
No, it's not showing for me. Maybe because
222, right beside it. There you go.
Activities and our way of being and way of doing. So in this first slide, you see how we've conceptualized.
Why don't I see that?
Cardinal directions associated.
Go back to the other screen.
Okay, let me stop it like that. Let me stop the share. How's that? Am I back on? Okay. So let me just take a few moments then to see if there's any questions or conversations people would like to have. Obviously, I have 3 little video clips that I'd wanted to share with you, but it will be there on the PowerPoint, so people will be able to go and track it later if I'm not able to get it going, you know, in a little while. But perhaps others would be interested in joining the discussion. Or are there any questions? Or shall I just keep going?
I have a question.
Any questions? Then let me just say, I'll take a few minutes to show you some of these things. Okay, Grandfather Commander's work was basically animated by grassroots people. And so he was really not a part of any kind of like formal world, though he connected with people all over the place. He hosted amazing gatherings from 1996 till the year he died, 2011, and people came and joined him from all over the world. And then they created various documentaries as they were inspired by different aspects of his work. This one is a National Film Board documentary of his visits to prisons. And this is where then he introduced the idea of forgiveness to inmates. He talked about how they needed to take responsibility for their own behaviors and then build their way to, you know, new bridges and transforming their lives. And it was really pretty amazing because at one point we hosted inmates from the federal prison on temporary absence leave to our gathering. And they helped create the structure for a Midwaywin Lodge and activities. Many years later, one of the people at the prison interview appeared at our gathering, and he was an Inuit guy. He didn't really speak any English, and so he was very shy amongst all the people. And then one day I saw him going and volunteering to clean the toilets, and in some fashion he was contributing to the work because he felt nonetheless a part of the circle. And that, I think, is the kind of energy that was so exciting to us. And was very exciting because a lot of the people who actually served as our security were former people who might have been in trouble with the law, but they were really the people we relied on to keep us all safe. And it was an amazing event. Grandfather also then made many presentations to government on environmental issues, peace issues, and all of those kinds of things. Amongst his many friends is this one, and Ted, you'll remember Adrian Esposito. And this is our friend with Asperger's syndrome. He came and found us one year, this rather huge kid, and he was talking about dealing with meltdown. And at that stage, I wondered, you know, what is this word, meltdown? And he was talking about the frustrations that he, as a kid with Asperger's syndrome, was dealing with, both in the schools and in his engagement with people at large. And his mother had been encouraging him to create videos, and he then asked grandfather if he thought that would be a good thing for him to be doing. And grandfather encouraged him, called him his brother. They made a really great connection. Later, Adrian came and presented videos at our gatherings. Years later, actually after grandfather died, he created this one. And there in this video, there is also a reflection on forgiveness and also the inspiration of many, many other elders who helped him, this sort of like white kid, on his healing journey. And there are brilliant ideas here for all people. Like right now, it should be hot off the Amazon racks, really. But it really shows also how everybody who had something important to contribute were important parts of the circle community. So even though I sort of like say we're grounding some of this in education work, in fact, it's really my biggest learnings have really been from my work in prisons, that huge exposure to Indigenous peoples and thinkings in the 90s, and this ongoing effort to animate the circle work. And then when we wrote this book, you know, we included many okay, so this one is really a statement about the ancestral grounds of the people. This is, the image here is actually of a cave in Mantulan Island. And at that stage, I didn't realize, but it was actually the home of the Algonquin people. And that message of the land was what drew William back to that place. And of course, it's the heart of the Great Lakes watershed. I want to show you this one. So when William Commander kept talking about peace, I kept trying to think, okay, in this world of such strife, how do we manifest this? And after much thinking, I created this, and we called it the frog principle. And we talked about how we go from the foundations of an issue to the results, to the opportunities that challenge can present, and to our goals. And this came really actually from a childhood encyclopedia where there were these transparencies, where you saw, you know, the frog and you saw its skin. And when you turn the transparency over, you saw its muscular system. And when you turn the next transparency over, you saw the skeletal system. And then you saw the vascular system. And that inspired me to create this. So basically, if you look at the red, we talk about the foundational issues in any kind of struggle. But in this instance, it was around colonization, genocide, war, those kinds of things. Sadly, when I went back to it after really 10 years, I found all those issues that I had thought were part of our past were actually live and huge part of our current day reality. Anyway, after those kinds of horrendous things, you have the ramifications, you know, the suicide, the racism, the environmental challenges, the devastation of the landscape, or the negative impacts of the colonization. But then you move to the zone of the opportunities. And there are the truth and reconciliation efforts, such as we had in Canada over the last several years. You have the peace building, the change in efforts, organizations, projects, things like that. But oftentimes we're frustrated to find that they don't manifest in transformation. And then we realized that really you need a much deeper spiritual value to create the transformation, because there's also the peace, the forgiveness, the love, the spiritual values that Indigenous peoples have shared with us and other leadership. And so actually we find when you looked at our transparency put together, you see all these issues live and happening, so that actually they can create a lot of confusion and disheartenment for us. So we used to superimpose that with a yellow transparency to suggest how the spiritual values, such as in the circle, you guys are animating with so many elders across really all over the place, and how that deep healing can contribute to helping us learn, figure out how to resolve some of these issues. So that is sort of like why the kindergarten dropout book became like a teaching thing. And when we supported the Wolf Project, you know, we linked it around the medicine wheel idea, but in the center lies the wolf. And the wolf was a very important teacher to William. When he was a child, he went out to the trap lines with his father, and his father sent him out to check the traps. And he was a little kid, and it was winter, and he was off on his snowshoes with his little dog. And then his dog kept hopping onto his snowshoes. And eventually William stopped and looked around and found that he was surrounded by 4 timber wolves, 4 big dogs, he called them. And so he had to hold his dog because it was his dog who was frightened. He had to quieten his dog. And he was just like overwhelmed with the majesty of these wolves. And they then looked at him for a long time, then went back on their backs and clawed into the sky, really. And then eventually they leapt up, and the leader, the alpha wolf, howled, and then they went bounding off. So when William came back to tell his father about this experience, his father asked him how he felt. Were you scared? And no, he hadn't felt any fear because he was in awe, really, of the majesty of the wolves. And his father said, well, if you'd reflected any fear, they would have killed you. You know, that's how it is in the winter, when you're out there alone like that. Well, wolf became really a big part of William's ongoing energy. It was a supporter. And when I mentioned the Wolf Project, it's a project that honors people who promote racial harmony. William received a Wolf Award. Then he became a special advisor to the project. People like Chief Avalokitenhorse was a recipient of a wolf. Nelson Mandela was a recipient of a wolf, that kind of thing. Okay, and there were other stories around wolves in our. In fact, one time, some elders were wanting to do a ceremony over William, and they sensed wolf energy, and they kind of wanted to draw it out. But I remember I touched his foot, you know, and somebody said, don't do that. But I realized the wolf was his protector. And after he woke up after this, the first thing he talked about was the childhood wolf experience. Okay, so William Commander died. He died on the eve of his gathering, and we continued with his gathering in 2011. So he had a huge send-off party. Everybody was there. And I was wondering whether the wolves would show up. And, you know, we had taken to showing movies on the big screen during the gatherings in the evening. So in the evening, I'll just tell you a little bit about our gatherings. There were 3 days of gatherings at William Commander's place. People came from all over the world. They camped out and they participated in sunrise ceremonies with the elders, talking and presentations by the lead voices in terms of the social justice, the racial harmony, the environmental issues, the peace building. In the afternoons, they participated in sweat lodges and other healing activities. In the evening, there was social dancing and drumming and things like that. So people really developed and engaged in community. But one of the evening activities could be go watch the movies. So we set up a big screen, showed movies. We showed Adrian Esposito's documentaries. Anyway, grandfather's funeral over, and we were going down to watch movies, and we watched this one called Canada the Movie, and it opens with a winter scene of Canada, and wouldn't you know it, the wolves are there and they're howling. And I started laughing, you know, it was like so special. It was so special. So yeah, so wolf, and of course, all that connection with the world of nature was so important for us. We created posters to show some of his work. Oh yeah. So when I was telling you earlier, and you could go to that video about how we operate the medicine wheel, you see on the first level, we're talking about the zone of vision, action, reflection, and animation and new wisdom. In the next, we show how we make that detailed in terms of our projects and our work. And so I, as it were, translated this document into an academic teaching course. And I delivered it informally to people to show the ongoing relevance of those ideas in contemporary times. So yeah, so that then has been like the other part of the ongoing work. One more thing I'll mention, and then I'm going to look at the comments. Grandfather decided I needed to be educated properly. And one day he decided, when I was thinking I was researching mega dumps, that no, he was going to buy me a kayak. And he insisted on doing this. And so we put the kayak into his lake. I was waiting for somebody to show me what to do. Nobody would. So I thought, how hard can this be? I put one toe into the kayak and it flipped me into the mucky, froggy water, the froggy water. And, suitably humbled, I got back into my kayak and then I kayaked. But over that summer, I learned so much about beaver, about muskrat, about the dens of diversity that nature creates. And I understood then about water. I understood about the spiritual energies that he had been trying to teach me about. Remember one day, I wanted to go to a certain place on the kayak, and a kayak kept moving in another direction, and there was no wind, there was no reason for it to go in that direction. So eventually I thought, okay, pay attention, let it be, go. And I did. And then I landed with 7 loons and they started to sing. And it was like truly magic because, I said I was an English literature major, always read about the loons, the voice of the bird in Canada. But there they were and they were singing to me. So when I came back to report, then grandfather said, well, Romola, it's energy. And that's when I began to understand energy in a totally, totally different way. So it was that kind of experience, that experience of engagement with nature directly, that became part of my Indigenous teaching. So I say it like this, I come from South Africa, Durban Beach. I love the ocean. I've traveled, fortunately, I'm so fortunate to travel all over Canada and much of the United States, driven through much of it. And I'll talk about a beautiful mountain, beautiful lake, things like that. The environment, the landscape. William Commander talked about Mother Earth. And he talked about a relationship with the Mother Earth, with a living Mother Earth. And I say he created really his circle of all nations because he saw a lot of people not awake to his mother. They were abusing his mother. And so he said, well, you know what? I've got to make these guys my relation in order to introduce them to my mother so that they will take better care of her. And they'll think of her as more than a pretty sunset. And frankly, that was my journey in. And this is actually what also gives me a kind of authority to speak about William and his teachings, because he trained me in that kind of fashion. He introduced me to his land. He introduced me to the water. And then he gave me the 2 things I say that were part of our talking circle. As we passed the feather around, I used to be very shy in the old days. I didn't have too many words to say. And when the feather go around, I think, oh my God, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Hardly listened to anybody. I was just worrying about what I was going to say. Till eventually I began to talk. And when I did my justice circles, we had hundreds of people talking. Gradually, I realized we have both the right and the responsibility to speak and share. And so then that became part of the other important thing that I learned. And so now this sharing of the William, the bigness of the William story, I've been so fortunate. I've learned from so many special elders, and I know so many of their interconnections with him, that unless I share this, not everybody else will have this kind of a full picture into the future. So I'm kind of like committed to doing this, and I'm grateful to have an opportunity to do some of this with you. Okay, so when was William given his vision, basis for his life work? I mean, I think he was always interested in everybody, but in 1961, he had cancer and he was going to die. He had gone down to 98 pounds. And then he had a pretty interesting experience. He says one day he woke up, he was leaning on his Chesterfield, and at the window, he heard a bird. It was dark at night. His daughter and his wife were still sleeping. But the bird there cried and sang so beautifully, his tears began to fall. And he knew it was more than a bird. He said, you know, to this creator force, I'm in so much pain, take me now, unless there's something you want me to do. And that was a transformational moment in his life, because then his creator gave him a big mission, which was to build peace. And his wife said afterwards, what's happened to you? You're not cursing all these people who destroyed our ancestors and destroyed our land. William had found a new way into relating to them, and he found the path to forgiveness. He always spoke the truth, but at the same time wanted to waken them up. But there were 4 threads to this healing journey. One, medicine plants that his wife, and another medicine elder. So he returned to the healing of the land for his healing. He went to a Belgian naturopath who actually, interestingly enough, when none of them, the spirit of the medicine plants could help him, offered to give him injections. Eventually, the Indian Affairs doctor wanted to know what it was. And they tested it. And what was there were tears. So part of the healing was really the crying for the pain of his people and himself. But he was also 98 pounds. The Scotland Yard and the RCMP came to visit him, and his shop, his canoe shop, his snowmaking shop, where he was building his snowshoes. And they wondered who it was for. And he said, for him, for himself. And they shook their heads because they saw a dying man, but he was also planning for his future. And those things contributed then to his vision. So that, John, is my race-through explanation for that. Somebody else said, okay, it helps you understand, grandfather. Yeah, so my goodness, I don't know if there's time for any more questions, but I've got like 3 minutes. And my gosh, thank you very much. It's been an honor to share. Please go and check out those videos, because I obviously haven't given William Commander his own voice in this presentation. I myself, as hard as everything is, I would like to say, when he died, before he died, in the 3 days before he died, woke up, he was praying in the middle of the night, and he says, they gave me a name. They gave me a name, Isaias. And we both looked it up the next day. What could this name be? I remember writing to somebody, couldn't figure it out. This last year, on the 3rd of August, which was the anniversary of William Commander's death, there was a tropical storm, Isaias. And I heard the name 3 times before I woke up, and I thought, oh my God. So, the council fire folk who gave him that name, gave him a name that links with the wake up of Mother Earth, And of course, the environmental crisis. We talk about climate change today, but it isn't really climate change. It's all the abuses that we have imposed on the earth, the species, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to understand it in a much bigger context in order to forge, that legacy for hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely beautiful.
I can't hear you, Susan. Oh, because I've turned my mic down.
Or Sir Dong, sorry. Napakalayo niya. Galing po siyang ikay. Wow! Pinood natin. Woohoo! All right. So, thank
Thank you so much, no? So share lang ng share po, teachers, no, para mas marami, especially to your IT admins. This would be very helpful to your administrators per se, no? Yeah, so that you can share and exchange thoughts afterwards.
Okay. So it's now time to introduce to our stream, okay, to our platform, no, the speakers for today, okay, who will be introducing to us this wonderful platform, which definitely teachers will
let's make it exit, Franco.
Yes. Okay. So first, let's have Sir Adrian McDonald, okay, from Impero.
You, Romola.
Stream. Okay. And of course,
is that coming from Romola?
Sir Miss Nella, okay,
you may have to mute Romola and then just listen.
In Nella, okay, and of course, okay, Mark Winter, okay, as well.
I'm muted.
I think Romola, you're going to have to mute and then just kind of listen as we do the wrap up now. Is that correct, Rodney?
Yeah, I muted her. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I can't see her though. How can I see her?
I don't know.
I want to look
at her.
Can you see her? Okay.
Yeah, go to gallery view. Go to gallery view.
All right. Let me see if I can. All right. So Romola, I can't see you, but I know you're there. So now that I get to wrap this up and follow up with you, I just want to say how grateful and honored I have been to be able to listen to you. I'm speaking for myself, but at the same time, I can see from what other people are saying too, how grateful they are. You are so animated. And I just love that. And you brought William Commanda to us. I have always regretted missing that gathering, but I feel like with all of the amazing amount of information that you shared and spirit and his teachings, you have become those things that he gave to the world. And I am so grateful, as I know everyone else is too. I want to just say personally that I tell everybody I have 25 years behind bars because I too have worked in federal, state, and juvenile corrections and tribal corrections. And I can understand and relate. And I now see why Ted always knew that I would love you and told me that I would love you, because I can see that part. I also want to thank you for this example that you've shown us for how important it is to capture everything that our elders are giving out to the world. And that's the whole point of our Wind Voices, is so that we could, in our own small little way, which is nothing compared to the plethora of what you have put together about William Commanda, but in our little way, just like we did with you today, that we could capture this information and hold it there safely for the future, to perpetuate and to protect that knowledge so that it can go on even when they're not here with us anymore. And you know, in that case, I talk about Kukum Elizabeth Babin, who was the very first of ours. She actually opened us in December with our doorway in to the Wind Voices. And now she has moved on out the doorway out. And gratefully, we're able to say that we have her teachings that are there, that are available to everyone. And that's the strength and the purpose of what it is that we're doing. So to have you stand here now, Romola, to just hours from the door opening to the summer solstice, which, as you have shared with us, is so very important to the next step in what we're doing. What a wonderful blessing you have been. And I will always be grateful personally, but I do, as I said, I believe I speak for the others. The talk that you're giving today will be available in 2 different places. People can share it. You're welcome to get it and share it as well. Trying to see if there's anything else that I wanted to say. The part about the justice, the balance, the forgiveness, all of this is exactly what we need to be taking with us as we move forward through the door of the solstice opening. And with that, Rodney, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else. I'll just go ahead and give the prayer. Should we do that?
Go ahead.
Okay. And this is for John Pappin, who loves when I light sage. John, this is sage for you. Grandfather, Heavenly Father, Heavenly Mother, Creator Gods, as we come to the closing of another beautiful Wind Voices opportunity, we are so thankful for our sister who came and brought this amazing amount of information and showed us how we can honor our elders, how we can honor each other, and how we can honor the future unborn faces to be able to bring in and protect these words and this knowledge. We know that we are living in interesting times. These are the times that have been prophesied, and that we are here now for a reason and a purpose. That, as Shahwin said that day when she spoke, that we are on the second wave. The first wave with Rolling Thunder and William Commanda and Leon Secretero and all of those has passed behind us now, and we are rising on the second wave and here for those who are coming up the third wave, and how grateful it is to know that we are a part of the same beautiful sea of knowledge and wisdom and information. Help us, please, to be able to stand in our strength and our integrity, to be able to be worthy as hollow bones, to be able to bring. Thank you for all that you have given us. And this we do say, Grandfather, Heavenly Father, Creator Gods, in gratitude and love. Aho mitaki hasi, aloha kia kua kuleana. Aho.
See everyone next Sunday.